crush your enemies.
They drew first blood, not me.
See them driven before you.
Oh, my user.
And hear the lamentation of your women.
But I pity the fool.
Glitter in the dark near the 10-house gate.
Phone home.
They're here.
Oh, real light sleeper, child.
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we're rewatching the 80s so you don't have to. We'll be reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in chronological order, overanalyzing what you've seen and spoiling what you haven't. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jesse Bayless.
And I'm Richard Wells.
And today we're discussing Barbarosa, released February 19th, 1982. We're finally out of February 12th. A lot of movies on February 12th.
Yeah, geez.
It was written by William D. Wittliff, directed by Fred Schepisi, and released by Universal Pictures and Associated Film Distribution. Screenwriter William Wittliff based the film's plot on stories his grandfather had told him as a child on their Texas ranch. Wittliff had previously written Willie Nelson's starrer Honeysuckle Rose, and when he presented a draft of Barbarosa to Nelson offering the title role, Nelson accepted within a couple pages, desperate to play the character.
He doesn't even show up yet.
Yeah. He's like, oh, I can't wait to play this guy. It's like, no, this is the Gary Busey part. They developed the story together with co-star Gary Busey for years before securing a production deal with Marble Arch Productions. The project was set up with a budget of $10 to $12 million and began shooting in late 1980. Producer Paul N. Lazarus III had caught director Fred Schepisi's most recent film, The Chant of Jimmy Blacksmith, at the Cannes Film Festival, and considered it to be a great Australian Western. We covered that with a mini-sode, and I will probably show it to you guys sometime soon because it's actually amazing. Mm-hmm. Willie Nelson insisted on casting his own horse to play Barbarossa's, which was a problem for many reasons. Firstly, it was a world champion Appaloosa, a $30,000 horse at the time, nearly $100,000 today. On top of that, it had a very unique pattern to its fur, which meant that the usual practice of utilizing 4 or 5 backup horses to double it was not an option. Ultimately, Schepisi approved the casting when Nelson showed off the animal's admittedly impressive training, and things seemed to have gone okay. There wasn't any kind of disaster on set.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I wouldn't want to use my
own wouldn't
animal.
either.
Yeah.
Like, put them in danger, especially knowing that you have backup animals. It's just like, oh, why do you have backup animals? Oh, because they get injured or tired or...
I think he was just showing off a little bit.
Yeah. Also, you can just paint a horse.
That's true.
That's why they call him an old paint.
Is that why they call him that?
Honestly, you could have put any
never
horse
heard
in there
that.
and I wouldn't have noticed it switched.
That's right. Suddenly he's riding a dog and I didn't notice.
Looks fine.
Director Schepisi has said, even at the time, that attaching himself to a Western was probably a mistake, but he'd always had a strong affinity for the genre. Within weeks of beginning production, a terrible offset car accident claimed the lives of camera operator James Lucas and camera truck driver Joseph Tutak, but it did not significantly impact the production schedule. The looming SAG strike also threatened to delay the film, but the producers struck an interim agreement to continue work during the strike. They also ran up against objections from the Cinematographers Guild, since Australian director Fred Schepisi had brought along his regular DP Ian Baker, who was not a member of the union. In this case, the loophole to keep Baker on the project was shooting in Texas, the only state in the American Southwest willing to grant Baker legal permission to work on the film. Lord Lugrade's ITC had recently merged with Associated Film Distribution and was set to distribute the film until the monumental box office failure of 1980's Raise the Titanic. Universal Pictures had bought the company out of near bankruptcy and, in acquiring the finished Barbarosa, shelved it for over a year after it tested poorly in a handful of limited releases, eventually dropping it nearly unmarketed in the drive-through circuit early 1982.
Huh. Really?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of bad movies this year.
The problem more so was that Heaven's Gate was obviously a major disaster. That came out while they were still working on this.
Okay.
Then they re-edited it, released it the next year. It was still terrible. And then the other project that they acquired through AFD with Barbarosa was The Legend of the Lone Ranger, which also performed miserably on a very high budget. So they assumed Western's dead, especially AFD Westerns, this is a waste of our time, and just put it out where they thought it would make the least splash. Because they just didn't want the bad press from it being terrible.
Yeah, it's not terrible.
I know, but that was their thinking, I think, at the time. We open in foothills at sunrise. In a series of dissolves, sunlight washes over the valley. We see a hat hung precariously on a long stick, and the camera backs up to reveal Gary Busey as Karl Westover, riding a horse and balancing the hat to block the sun from his face, which doesn't seem extremely necessary since the hat has a fairly wide brim.
Right.
Isn't that the point of hats?
You're supposed to just put it on your head, buddy. But maybe he couldn't hang it at the right angle or something.
Right. He was getting more shade from...
Maybe.
I don't know.
He's leading his horse through a thick, dry bramble, and in close-up inserts, we see thorns tearing his clothes and drawing blood. Undoubtedly, the horse isn't enjoying this either. We hard cut to a dead man with a handlebar mustache propped up in a coffin. This is August, Karl's brother-in-law, who we'll learn here died by Karl's hand, but according to Karl's sister Hilda, widow of the deceased, entirely by accident. August's father Herman demands justice from Karl's father Emil, and Hilda tries to intervene.
Y'all have lost a son. I've lost a husband. Isn't that enough?
Herman promises to take his sons Otto and Floyd on the road to avenge August himself. A photographer orders the crowd to pose with the deceased for a final photo, and we cut back to Karl drinking from a shallow puddle in a nearly dry riverbed.
Now, I thought that we were going to make a point because they do so many inserts of like him, bleeding from scratches and, leaving tufts of his clothes behind.
That he was going to be easily trackable.
That he was going to be followed or I'm not sure what the point of all that was. Were we trying to...
I think it was just to show how painful the desert is.
Or that he's that inexperienced that
Maybe.
he can't navigate the desert.
Yeah, because it seems pretty dumb what he's doing. It seems like there should be enough open land that you don't have to crash through a rose bush on a horse.
I would think so.
Jingle jangles approach, and a shadow falls over the thirsty man.
Manos arriba, gordo.
Which roughly translates to, hands up, fatty. Karl turns to find Willie Nelson as the titular Barbarossa silhouetted against the sun. Their introduction is interrupted by a third man who shouts Barbarossa's name to telegraph his intentions. Barbarossa calmly advises the man against an attack, but gives him first and even second shot before raising his own weapon to respond.
Barbarossa! No!
The second shot is surprisingly close to target and shaves a strip of flesh along Barbarossa's left cheekbone, but he barely reacts. I really love the way this shot looks, of him getting hit in the face with a bullet and not even reacting to it, just being like,
well,
I gotta aim calmly.
I like that it leaves a hole in his hat and it's there for the rest of the film. Then he's
Well,
got
yeah,
this
there's
little...
the one on his hat and there's the stripe on his cheek that are there for the whole rest of the movie. I did like that.
It's just it's a nice visual, especially when the light's behind him and he has like this ray of light coming through his hat.
Yeah. The man gets 2 more shots off, with the fourth shot taking a small bite out of the brim of Barbarossa's hat before the man takes a first shot back and kills his assailant. The man collapses dead in the dirt beside Karl. Barbarossa leans down over the dead man.
Damn fool. I can't teach you people a damn thing, can I?
He kisses the man's face and turns to leave. Barbarossa determines that Karl has gone several days without food and invites him hunting. In a nearby plain, they spot an armadillo, and Karl is instructed to catch it with his hands. Karl is not cut out for this work, and the armadillo capably evades his efforts.
I would not be touching an armadillo with my bare
Leprosy,
hands.
right?
You get leprosy.
Yeah.
Well, it's only one kind of armadillo. I guess I can't tell the difference between them.
Look for the one that's missing a leg. That's the delicious one.
So good, your lips will fall off.
Barbarossa puts Karl on firewood duty, and we cut to a campfire that night. Karl asks about the would-be assassin, and Barbarossa says he knows the man's family.
Must be pretty bloodthirsty.
They're damn good people, the Zavalas. Now don't you be talking about them, all right?
Yes, sir.
This raises so many questions for me about because we don't get enough, I feel, later on of why he loves this family so much.
Yeah, it is weird, because they're constantly trying to kill him.
Yeah, and even before that, they were like just making his
I think the
life
family
miserable.
liked him before that, before the inciting incident of this of the history of these two families. Karl asks about Barbarossa's name, and he says it's a nickname the Zavalas family gave him, but he doesn't elaborate here. Barbarossa is Spanish for pink beard. Karl tells Barbarossa he's on the run from a bad situation himself.
Well, the Mexicans got a saying, what cannot be remedied must be endured.
Barbarossa holds a locket with a photo of a woman and child, and then flicks it closed, and we cut to a man on crutches descending a staircase somewhere. This is Don Braulio, played by Gilbert Roland, and with each step down, he recites the name of a fallen Zavala man who has been killed hunting Barbarossa. He informs the crowd of Barbarossa's latest victim, Luis. Don Braulio walks down a line of the family's eldest men and decides on Eduardo as the next lucky contestant. Eduardo assures Don Braulio he will find and kill the man for the family. As evidence of the kill, Braulio asks Eduardo to come back with Barbarossa's cojones on a stick. They hang a gold crucifix over his head for protection, and he sets off to the horizon.
But you're not going to know that they were his balls, right?
He just comes back with his own balls. Like 2 hours later. I got him!
Pull a Snow White huntsman is like, these are pig's balls.
I know this pig. We cut to Karl waking beside a dying campfire in front of an abandoned adobe structure. He can't find Barbarossa and rides his horse to a small village nearby. Inside the local cantina, he finds a band performing and cockfights being gambled on. He's eyed flirtatiously by several older prostitute women, but he's just looking for something to drink.
Do you remember the last time we had cockfighting in a pub?
Heaven's Gate?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. He chugs his drink, and immediately 2 of the working women are fighting over him. When he tries to shove them off, an impatient pimp orders him to choose between them until one woman stabs the other with a pocket knife she found stabbed into his table. And somehow the pimp expects Karl to reimburse him for the stabbed woman. Maybe it was his knife that was stabbed into the table?
Yeah, I couldn't. I thought that they were framing him. Like, it's like, oh, I stabbed this woman, and she goes, oh, he did it. Like, because I'm not sure.
Because he doesn't even try to deny it.
Right. But I thought he was going to put him to work.
Right.
As a
prostitute.
As a prostitute. Like, no.
You're going to have to pay for this. She was a damn good moneymaker.
In the absence of anything to pay with, we cut to Karl working off the debt with chores and frustratingly throwing a rock into a pig pen in anger. He's confronted by Herman's boys, Otto and Floyd, and reiterates what Hilda has already explained, that what happened to August was an accident. We never really hear what happened between them, except that it was an accident of some sort, but we don't delve super deep into this accident and what exactly happened. The brothers raise their weapons at him when suddenly there's a gunshot down the hall in the cockfighting room that kicks dust into the hallway. The scene is actually very poorly edited, to the point that it's unclear what's happening from one shot to the next. But after the gunshot and the cockfight, we see one of Herman's boys take a shot and miss over Karl's shoulder. Possibly the other brother fires into the ceiling in shock, but we don't really see him aiming or pulling the trigger. The cockfighting room empties down the hall, and then we get a really tight, close shot of Barbarossa standing into frame from somewhere. Where? Who knows? Was he behind the bar? Was he in the cockfighting room? Was he outside?
He's Barbarossa. He disappears.
He's just
Barbarossa.
Magic. He just popped out of a top hat here on the counter. How did he know what was going on between Karl and the boys if he was both out of earshot and line of sight? That's not explained. He tells the crowd to raise their hands and give him all their money, so maybe he just picked a fortunate moment to rob this place and it was entirely coincidence?
I think that's what we're meant to imply.
I think so too, and that seems insane. He invites Karl to help him rob the place, and Karl accepts the new position. Turns out, you rarely get rewarded with raises for loyalty, and bigger pay jumps usually come from switching employers like this. Karl robs Herman's boys and then begs them to just go home and forget about their mission, or else he'll have to shoot them both. Karl's previous boss gives him a wry smile, and Karl steals a cigar from the man's pocket to smoke before following Barbarossa away from the place. When they reconvene outside of town, Barbarossa tosses Karl his half of the loot and says his goodbyes, but Karl isn't ready to part ways yet. Their relationship so far is eerily reminiscent of that between Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, in that one of them is a grizzled pro and the other one is a greenhorn up-and-comer with a sincere interest in friendship. Karl admits that he was surprised to see Barbarossa at the cantina, and Barbarossa explains he shows up a couple times a year to rob the place of anything he can take with him. Guns, money, animals, everything except sheep.
Just about anything that I can herd or walk off with, except sheep. I hate this goddamn sheep. You couldn't give me one of them woolly bastards. Me too. I hate it.
Do you guys recall the last time we saw someone so intolerant of owning one specific species of farm animal?
Oh, crap. What was that?
Doesn't sound familiar to me.
He was going to take his ransom money and start a ranch in Arizona.
Yeah, it's from Venom, right?
Nope.
No?
Different hostage situation.
Oh. A stranger is watching?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And what was the animal that he didn't want on his farm?
Goats?
Chickens.
Chickens.
Oh.
Jesus Christ, I fucking hate chickens, dumb shits.
Look at all them chickens.
Karl offers himself as a full-time partner, but Barbarossa is not interested. By way of a resume, Karl explains that he recently killed his brother-in-law with a stick, which is the furthest we will go in detail to what happened. Do you guys recall the last time we saw Busey clashing with his brother-in-law? It was the last time we saw him.
Was it in Thunderbolt and Lightfoot?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
His brother-in-law, Mario, was running the landscaping business.
Vic Tabax?
Oh.
He was the brother? I thought he was like his father.
No, he was making them work in the rain and then take their break first thing at the beginning of the day because he didn't want to lose any hours from his men.
My own brother-in-law.
Barbarossa asks how good Karl is with his weapon, and right on cue, Karl drops it in the dirt. Barbarossa gives him a quick shooting lesson. 3 rules. Point like with your finger, pull the trigger gently, and keep your feet firmly planted to sell your confidence to whoever you're up against. We've already seen this technique in motion when Barbarossa didn't react to the shooter earlier. Eduardo arrives at the cantina asking after Barbarossa, and the recently robbed patrons point him in the direction they left in. Barbarossa and Karl spot an elderly couple in the desert with a burro overloaded with dry grass. Karl isn't comfortable robbing them.
That's all they got in the world. Well, they got each other. Take it.
No, sir, I can't. I ain't gonna. Bitch.
No, sir, I ain't gonna.
Barbarossa is infuriated by Karl's insolence and storms off, warning him never to do that again or risk a dissolution of their already shaky partnership. He makes it clear that he's the boss here. He'll decide who and what they will rob moving forward, but in the middle of his lecture, they're ambushed by a gang of outlaws who claim they own the trail they're on.
Maybe you just don't know who I am, huh?
Oh, I think I recognize you now. You're Mr. Shit.
I'm Uncle Morales.
You know who I am?
Si, senor. I know who you are.
Oh, you may be in trouble.
As Angel Morales and his men march Karl and Barbarossa back to their camp, the people under Morales' protection recognize Barbarossa and break out in surprised whispers. Karl sees they also have Floyd and Otto prisoner and offers them an I told you so since he advised them to head straight home and to not follow him. Morales kills both brothers right in front of him and then orders Karl to dig graves for the men. Barbarossa just watches, and a younger woman from their camp walks up and tucks a flower over his ear before stroking his beard. When the time comes to kill Karl and Barbarossa, they are interrupted by the arrival of the old man and woman from the desert. They reveal that the burro they were walking was actually overloaded with gold, and they distribute it to the people of the village. The old woman tells Morales, her son, that Karl defended them from Barbarossa in the desert, and Barbarossa confirms the story.
That's what the little son of a bitch did, all right. I was going to rob you, feeble old papa, and shoot that squawking old woman over there.
You gotta respeto.
Morales shoots Barbarossa in the chest, knocking him back into a freshly dug grave, but Karl is offered a reprieve for defending Morales' parents. Karl is instructed to bury his friend, but while he does, Barbarossa starts talking to him from the grave.
I thought you was dead. Yeah, I'm close. Just tickle my innards a little, I think.
You didn't hit nothing important.
That night, Barbarossa drags Karl by his feet out of the cave dwelling that he's sharing with Morales' parents.
Yeah.
he's right in between them.
He's like right between them, like the little buffer.
I feel like they were supposed to be guarding him and keeping him from escaping, and so that's why Barbarossa had to pull him by his feet to get him out. Rather than just leave by cover of night, Barbarossa makes grand plans for revenge. The sun rises in the morning to reveal Morales buried up to his neck in the dirt beside the corpses of Otto and Floyd. How he managed to bury this man vertically without waking him up is never explained.
Yeah, not just, I mean, he buried him, but he also buried the other two vertically as well.
They probably did that before they woke anybody.
Well, we don't know that they're vertical. I mean, they could just be sitting
just be heads.
They're squatting?
They could just be sitting on their butts with their legs stretched out. You know, like
yeah, that'd be funny. Like, they're just lazy about it.
Well, I mean,
how flat can we get them? I would just cut off their head and just bury the neck.
Like digging straight down that in that desert would be much more difficult than just.
Yeah, interesting.
Unless digging holes.
Yeah.
You know.
I can only assume that everyone was heavily drugged for them to get away with this without waking anybody up. Because everyone saw Barbarossa shot the day before, they assume his ghost is to blame. They don't offer to dig up Morales for fear of angering the spirit of Barbarossa.
Oh, is that what happened? I couldn't figure out why he was still in the ground when we come back to him later. I'm like,
yeah, they won't help him because they think a ghost did it.
They won't help him.
Yeah. They soon discover that on his way out, Barbarossa's ghost also stole all the gold that he failed to intercept earlier. Morales screams to the heavens for rescue, and it doesn't come. Late in the afternoon, Karl and Barbarossa come to a steep rock face at the edge of a small river. They scale the cliff face, nearly falling a couple times. Very near the top, Barbarossa needs help and instructs Karl to get rid of the gold to help him. Karl stupidly tosses it down to the river instead of up over the top, but it frees his arms to pull Barbarossa up safely.
Well, there goes the gold.
We said get rid of it.
I didn't say get rid of it down there. We already been down there. I don't know what made me think you'd make a partner anyway. Can't even catch a goddamn armadillo.
Karl takes the criticism to heart and then looks down the cliff again. Barbarossa gets a fire started while Karl makes his way down to the saddlebags full of gold. On a precarious edge, he's nipped at by a rattlesnake and loses his grip, falling dozens of feet to the river below.
But he grabs the snake.
Well, you got to bring it with you to the hospital to confirm.
This is the snake that bit me. Is it dangerous?
It's still biting him multiple times.
It's like the guy in Beetlejuice with the snake in the sleeping bag.
By pure serendipity, Karl finds the gold hanging on a branch in the water and even encounters Eduardo, the current Zavala charged with hunting down Barbarossa.
But Eduardo doesn't know this guy.
Right, yeah.
So
at first he's like, is this... Oh, no, this isn't the guy that I'm...
Yeah, and Karl kind of gives him like this shrug of like, well, are you going to do something about this or what?
We cut back to the triangle of heads buried vertically in the dirt. Herman, the father of Otto and Floyd, is devastated to see his 2 remaining sons have been killed pursuing vengeance for their brother August. At night, above the cliff face, Barbarossa lays beside the campfire and taps gunpowder from his ammunition into the bullet wound in his chest. He ignites it to cauterize the wound. Karl arrives just as he lights it, with the gold over his shoulder. He drops it in Barbarossa's lap to prove he's worth his partnership.
But you didn't bring me no armadillo for my supper, though, did you, by God?
And then, from over his other shoulder, Karl produces a fat armadillo for supper. They share a laugh.
Suppose you want me to cook the sumbitch for you, too.
Somehow, Barbarossa's horse has made it to the top of these rocks with them. And Barbarossa promises they will find a steed for Karl tomorrow. We hard cut to him struggling to steer a burro. Barbarossa says that the gold they've collected isn't for him. He's going to give it to his wife, Josephina.
She lives with her papa, Don Braulio Zavala.
Karl suddenly understands why so many Zavalas have come after them. The next day, Eduardo finds the shell casing that Barbarossa dumped gunpowder out of. Karl and Barbarossa come to a walled-in property and spy on the place with a telescope. Even from this distance, they can hear a band inside singing of their journey en Espanol. Barbarossa translates the lyrics for Karl.
Don Barbarossa did a miraculous thing. Down on the Rio Grande, he was shot and buried by Angel Morales. Early the next morning, there was a terrifying cry.
Well, ain't singing nothing about me.
Shh, listen. When Morales and Barbarossa traded places in the earth...
Oh.
How about that? Oh, here's... This is your part. Don Barbarossa was traveling with a gringo child.
Gringo child?
The song ends with the townspeople catching and killing Barbarossa. This entire structure is the stronghold of the Zavala family, led by Don Braulio.
I like the lyric, though, about the gringo child, where it says, although he's a half pint, he measures up to a quart.
Yeah.
I was like, and Gary Busey goes, all right, that's part.
He's like, that's actually pretty good. It's like, that's incredible that it translates so well, too. When night falls, Barbarossa sneaks inside and happens upon his wife Josephina right away. It's like there's 17 people that live here, and the first person you ran into is the only one that's not programmed to murder you. She confesses that she'd like him to visit more, at least more often than every 6 months. As they sneak back to Josephina's room, he overhears Don Braulio telling the young Zavala boys about the legend of Barbarossa. Even according to Don Braulio's own narrative, Barbarossa saved his life in a gunfight, and then came home to work the ranch and care for their children. His only crime was falling in love with Don Braulio's daughter, Josephina. An unforgivable crime, apparently.
Your own daughter, Don Braulio.
They were married against my wishes.
At this point, Karl sneaks into the compound to hear the ending of the story. According to the Don's version, Barbarossa got sloppy drunk at the wedding, so they kicked him out, but in the morning, he awoke to find Barbarossa with a shotgun to his leg, and multiple family members dead on the floor with their throats slit. Their blood stained his beard, hence the nickname Barbarossa, which I think technically means pink beard, but Barbarossa translates it as red beard here. The story ends with Barbarossa blasting Don Braulio's leg off at the knee with a shotgun, and they swear vengeance on the man. Karl sneaks around looking for Barbarossa, and, to escape a passing crowd, ducks into a dark bedroom and finds a girl about his age sleeping inside. He points a gun at her and begs for silence. She invites him to hide under her covers when someone comes to her door, and he trusts her. Don Braulio peeks in to see her.
All is well, Juanita?
Sí, don Braulio. Everything is fine.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Alone together again, Juanita asks Karl if he's worried, and he admits that he is worried for his friend Barbarosa. Juanita is too, and they're suddenly kissing. Back with Barbarosa, Josephina locks away the stockpile of gold he's brought her. They're saving up to run away together. She wants to go now, but he thinks maybe 6 more months will be enough. He doesn't want her to abandon their daughter together, and she informs him their daughter is older than he remembers. They pop into the same bedroom to check on her and find Juanita and Karl locked in an embrace. Do you remember the last time that we saw a husband and wife find their daughter in bed with another man?
Oh, it was that one we just watched, wasn't it?
Same one I've referred to a bunch in this episode.
I've been listening to you. What are you talking about? I don't remember.
Thunderbolt and Lightfoot.
Oh, yeah.
Karl doesn't understand why Barbarosa is so angry and yanking him out of bed.
You goddamn girl crazy son of a bitch. You're all your brains in the head of your pecker. Get move. What is wrong? You mean what's wrong? You know what's wrong.
Barbarosa!
On their way out, Barbarossa's shouts draw the attention of Don Braulio.
Damn you for all this misery. I know your game.
Have you not gotten what you wanted as well?
All I ever wanted was to be a part of this family.
Don Braulio sounds the Barbarosa alarm, and a dozen Zavala boys spring to action. The next morning, Karl confesses to Barbarosa that he cares for Juanita and would like to see her again. Of course, we expect Barbarosa to react poorly to this message, but he doesn't, maybe because he sees the hypocrisy of following in Don Braulio's footsteps. Or, I guess, footstep. Because he only has one leg.
He still has to. In fact, he has more footsteps because he got crutches.
Those aren't feet, though. Maybe they're feet. I don't know the definition of feet. What do you call them? Feet. Barbarosa says any anger Karl detects is because he stole a horse from the Zavalis ranch and he doesn't steal from his own people. Karl asks Barbarosa to confirm the ending of the story Don Braulio told the children, and while he doesn't confirm it, he doesn't deny it either.
Well, he said you came back in and killed Marcelo and Tomas.
You believe that?
What is the alternative here, though?
Yeah.
That Don Braulio killed his own sons to frame Barbarosa? Is that what we're supposed to believe happened when we've already known Barbarosa to be a prolific killer of Zavala men?
We never explain it.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating.
It's weird that so little of this backstory is actually spelled out.
Yeah.
Well, because we come back to it over and over and over again, and yet Barbarosa admits to parts of it.
Right.
But then
he never denies any of it.
But he doesn't deny any of it, but he also doesn't explain any of it.
Right. But the same thing for Karl, though. When we talk about his story, it's like, I killed August by accident. It's like, what happened? It's like, I hit him with a really big stick, and he died.
How was that
like,
an accident?
What happened? Was he attacking your sister? Because I would say that if that's what happened.
Yeah.
Or explain some of the context that makes it look less bad for you. Because otherwise, I think when you say it was an accident, you mean I didn't think a stick would kill him, but I hit him with a stick hard enough to kill him.
Right.
And that's still murder. That's barely an accident. Barbarosa at least admits to having blown off Don Braulio's leg, and luckily doesn't have to explain why because they hear Eduardo Zavala approaching. Barbarosa and Karl squat in the grass to watch the assassin from afar, and we're suddenly in a dark blue day for night filter. Apparently we jumped forward 12 hours, and Eduardo is sitting here beside a campfire now. Karl notices the man has fallen asleep and sneaks over to the makeshift camp to count coup by removing Eduardo's hat. As a funny joke, he tosses a handful of bullets into the campfire before crawling back to Barbarosa. When the bullets explode, they wake Eduardo, who stands and quickly finds that someone has taken a knife to his hat and cut the brim the whole way around it. Naturally, he blames Barbarosa for the prank.
Barbarosa! Well, I hope you're happy you got the little son of a bitch stirred up enough.
Well, he thinks it's you.
You will never catch me sleeping again.
Well, I thought he'd scare him off.
This Zavala will kill you.
Well, old Braulio may have finally growed one man enough to do the job.
Karl asks why he can't just leave this area that the assassins are hunting him in.
Move? Yeah. That's my family over there.
And bizarrely, we switch back to the daytime filter before the scene ends, and Eduardo shouts one more Barbarosa into the sky before our heroes ride off in the morning. It seems accidental that we went dark and then went light again when they're sitting in the same place.
Well, and from Eduardo's perspective, he's pretty much gone in a circle.
Right, yeah.
Because they can't be too
He's
far.
already back at the Zavala Ranch.
Yeah, exactly.
The two men come to a horse auction in Abrazos. They stop in on the event to get some food and drink, and while they talk, Karl is spotted by Herman, the father of the 3 dead boys. He points a gun at Karl and shoots a glass mug out of his hand. When Barbarosa tries to shoot back, Karl swats his gun down and speaks directly to the old man.
Bandits killed him down in Mexico. I didn't have nothing to do with it. I never meant to kill August neither.
The old man switches to a revolver and answers with more gunfire. Herman Pahmeyer misses Karl repeatedly, and Karl shoots a branch beside the old man to show off his aim and self-control. With his cylinder spent, Pahmeyer starts reloading his gun, and Karl continues to show mercy, shooting into the dirt between the old man's feet. He advises Pahmeyer to go home so none of them has to die here today. Barbarosa seems impressed by Karl's restraint. Pahmeyer throws his gun to the ground and shuffles away defeated. Barbarosa thinks here's as good a time as any for them to part ways. And again, it reminded me of Thunderbolt and Lightfoot.
What's the matter with me? Ain't I been good company?
Barbarosa tosses Karl his share of the gold and explains his plans to run away with Josephine. Thinking his local troubles are over, Karl returns to his family farm. He spots his sister in a chair out front and creeps up to surprise her, but she's practically catatonic.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what was happening here.
I think she has literally just been in, like, a semi-comatose because of everything that's happened around her and the fact that they're, like, basically being starved out in this village now.
Well, I thought that her father was dead.
Right, yeah.
And then we you know, we're going to go into the house and see that he's, like, it looks like he's dying.
Because she's supposed to be his caretaker and she's out here, like, not responding. Inside, Karl finds his father Emil in bed, and the man is ecstatic to be reunited with his son.
Karl, where the goddamn hell have you been?
Yeah, he pulls a full Grandpa Joe here. He's just like, I'm dying. Oh, wait, Karl's here.
I got a golden satchel. Dad explains that Hilda has lost all purpose in the wake of her husband's death, and that Emil hasn't found much reason to get out of bed either. Barbarosa moves through a thick forest on the edge of town when he's suddenly abandoned by his animal, and Eduardo appears in a high tree and puts a bullet in Barbarossa's shoulder. Barbarosa runs for his life, and Eduardo tracks him through bloody grass until he loses the trail. The next morning, Hilda at least acknowledges Karl's greeting and smiles back to hear his plans for the day, breaking in a pack of horses he purchased with his share of the gold. Emil rises from the table to go look at his new animals, but the second he gets the front door open, his neighbor Herman Pahmeyer is standing there with a rifle ready and puts a shot in the old man's belly. When he sees he's hit the wrong man, he runs away, and Karl follows him back to his own home.
Hello, the house!
Do you guys recall the last time we heard someone address a structure and not the person inside?
Yeah, it seems so familiar when you said it. I'm trying to think of what it was.
It happened in the TV show I was just watching, but I don't remember it happening in a movie. For
Apparently that was just an old-fashioned way to...
Yeah.
Because they didn't have doorbells yet. So you just shouted, hello, the house. Don't go in the woods alone. The maniac lived in a house full of furs, and the police are saying, hello, the house from outside.
Hello, the cabin.
And in that episode, we referred back to an earlier instance of a hello, the structure. But it was hello, the ship.
Oh, is that...
you said it was unfair because it wasn't a movie.
I said it was unfair because it's not a movie?
Correct. Because it was something that
it's a MacGyver. It's a MacGyver episode.
Which one is that from?
Is it the Bigfoot one?
Ghost Ship.
Yeah.
MacGyver episode, Ghost Ship, where he hunts down the notorious Bigfoot monster.
Hello, the ship!
Herman comes to the window and admits he didn't mean to kill Karl's father. Karl demands a truce to end the bloodshed, but he gets suspicious when Mr. Pahmeyer comes to the door, and he lets him fire one more time before Karl has no choice but to put the man down. Months have passed now, and we see Karl working his family farm alone. His father is dead, his sister is gone or possibly dead as well, and he has grown a scraggly beard. As he inspects his crops, he's surprised by Barbarosa.
You're a sad-looking son of a bitch.
Karl fills him in on the recent events, and Barbarosa suggests they team up to take this show on the road again. The first stop is a supply run for their trip, but when Karl disappears to do the shopping, Barbarosa senses someone else is here. Eduardo wanders out of the trees and announces he will kill Barbarosa today. Barbarosa asks about various members of the Zavala family, including Eduardo's father.
How's the old booger? He's dead.
Don't tell me that.
You killed him years ago. You shot him here. Did you kill Manuel, Luis, Aleman, Cuco, Lorenzo?
Them good men.
There are others.
Yeah. There's gonna be one more. If you don't step aside, you haven't got enough ass in your britches to pull the trigger on Barbarosa.
Barbarosa walks his horse calmly past Eduardo and reminds him that if he throws himself on the pile of dead Zavala men, there will be no one left to care for his old mother. This should be a growing problem back at the ranch, that there's a bunch of old women that are not being attended to by husbands.
Actually, statistics show that women are fine when the men die.
Much less work, actually, for them.
The men are the ones without wives that have the issue.
If we can just get Barbarosa to kill the rest of these guys, we're going to have a utopia here. When Barbarosa disappears into the distance, Karl holds the boy at gunpoint and orders him to throw down his weapons. He even makes the man take off his boots so he can't keep following them. Eduardo informs Karl he will kill the old man soon, and Karl assures the boy that Barbarosa is more than just an old man. Eduardo disappears on foot, and Karl throws his boots into a large bush. But when we cut back to Eduardo, he's sliding a blade through a slot in his crucifix necklace. Through a thick of branches, he spots Barbarosa collecting firewood.
Karl? Is that you, Karl?
Eduardo charges the old man and stabs him in the gut with his crucifix blade.
The 21-foot rule applies here.
Yeah.
Like he just couldn't get his gun drawn in time.
Sometime later, Karl finds him here stabbed and bleeding.
Barbarosa.
They killed me this time.
Barbarosa starts back into the story of his wedding night and explains that Don Braulio and his boys cut off Barbarosa's ears. He shows him the stumps of the ears that have been hidden by hair this whole time.
I shot his leg off for it.
Don Braulio thought if they mutilated him, that Josephina would lose interest or that it would scare Barbarosa away, but he always came back to her. Karl makes a deal with the dying man that he will intercept Eduardo before he gets back to the Zavala ranch to preserve the legend of the immortal Barbarosa. The obvious downside to this plan being that Josephina will think Barbarosa is alive and just not visiting anymore. I think what happens actually solves that problem, but I'll explain that when we get to it.
Yeah.
Karl promises to destroy Barbarosa's body so it can never be recovered. He burns the man's remains beside a river and wraps his belongings in a blanket to pack away.
So the guy survives being shot in the gut, but this little tiny like penknife and a crucifix takes him out.
Yeah, I mean, if you hit the right thing and you expel the right, and it's also maybe been 10 years since he got shot in the gut. We don't know how long they've been apart.
He just survived getting shot in the gut by the other guy.
Yeah, but that could have been a long time ago. We don't know. They were apart for a long time.
What do you mean they were? Like, this is within the course of...
Gary Busey grew a beard.
Okay.
They're implying that months, maybe years have passed since his father and sister died. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They've been apart for a long time, and this whole time Barbarosa has been out there leading this guy around in the desert. But Eduardo's been after him the whole time.
I guess I didn't take it as being that far between incidents. But...
I feel like a beard is at least meant to imply months have passed. But I took it as years because now the farm looks dilapidated. There's nobody there working it even.
Okay.
Like he let the staff go when his family died, I guess.
Yeah.
And his crops are not coming in anyway, so he's not really leaving anything behind by joining up with Barbarosa again.
Yeah. His little garden.
Yeah.
That I think is going to.
It looks like he's got like bonsai corn. it's like a foot tall.
As high as a cat's eye.
That's supposed to trim it down there.
That's where they get the baby corn.
Oh, is
for,
that where that?
Chinese
That's how they make couscous. Is couscous? What is couscous? I don't even know what it is. I love it. I don't know what shape it grows in. It's in my head. It's like how asparagus grows. Like you've seen that meme where it's like asparagus grows the way that you'd think someone set a trap with asparagus to trick someone into thinking that's how it grows. Because it's literally just a stalk of asparagus sticking out of the dirt exactly as high as it would be cut in the store.
Yeah.
So maybe couscous just grows in piles with a small fork near it. I don't know.
You could tell that Patrick doesn't cook any of the food in our house.
I don't know why the fork needs to be near it or small.
Food just appears in front of him with forks.
Food just grows right there on the plate, right? We cut to Eduardo racing full speed, still on foot, back to the Zavala ranch with news of Barbarosa's death. Karl speeds after him on horseback. Unfortunately, the plant life is thicker where Karl catches up with Eduardo, and the kid manages to knock Karl out with a large stick and steal his horse. I assumed here this is his death scene.
Yeah.
Because the right vengeance would be that he gets killed with a large stick. But that's not what happened here. He went unconscious. Well, and for some reason, Eduardo, is like a firm disbeliever in the double tap. It's like, first of all, you should have stabbed Barbarosa in the brain before you left, and then you should have killed this guy, because both of them want desperately to kill you.
Yeah. But you could argue that this did kill Karl.
Oh, maybe.
He stopped being Karl.
There you go. And then someone else took over his body. A fresh ghost took over his body. Eduardo makes it back to the ranch and informs Don Braulio that his mission was accomplished. Don Braulio is reluctant to believe it, and a bit disappointed that Eduardo did not bring back the requested cojones as proof.
Where are his cojones?
I am the proof. I would not have come back if I had not done this thing.
Don Braulio shares the announcement with his entire family and plans a party to honor Eduardo tonight. Josephina is obviously heartbroken by the news. At the party, the head table is awkwardly quiet, with Don Braulio and Eduardo in the center, pleased to have finally brought an end to the family curse, but they're bookended on either side of the table by Barbarosa's wife Josephina and daughter Juanita, who are both understandably somber. Out in the wilderness, Barbarossa's horse surprises Karl, and he smiles. During a pause in the festivities, a young girl comes forward to present Eduardo with a crown of leaves, but Don Braulio is frightened when he spots what appears to be Barbarossa riding around the perimeter of the fiesta in the dark.
They're really setting it up for this little girl to die.
I know. I thought for sure he's going to shoot through her. He's going to in Bruges the end of this movie. Do you guys recall the last time a man was standing before a crowd to address them and then petrified when they spotted someone they believed was dead in the audience?
Zorro the Gay Blade?
No, more recent than that.
Oh.
It wasn't a Western.
Okay.
Present day. Plot revolves around a lot of people thinking this character is dead until they show up alive.
I don't know.
It screened on a spaceship once until everyone got sucked out the airlock.
Oh, Sharky's Machine?
Sharky's Machine.
Sharky's Machine.
Do you remember when Rachel Ward shows up at the press conference and the senator who was told that his girlfriend was killed with a shotgun blast is like suddenly Mitch McConnelling on stage? Just as the girl touches the crown to Eduardo's head, Karl shoots him from the edge of the party. Luckily, he's a dead shot, or else this girl would just be splattered all over the table.
But it's not a kill shot.
Yeah, and he shouldn't have even shot, honestly. Like, he should have at least waited for this girl to get out of the way.
He should have shot Don Braulio.
Yeah, kill both of them. Who cares?
He's the one who's instigating all of this revenge killing. Once he's dead, I don't think the three is like...
Yeah, nobody else is as obsessed with this as he is. Except for the people that have been fed this propaganda from birth. But most of those people are dead now. Karl rides his horse past Josephina to return the locket with her photo, and then rides back out into the night while the entire Zavala family chants Barbarossa's name, and we fade to black for credits. So I think him handing the locket back is his indication to her, I'm not him, this was his, and it needs to go back to you. I think he's close enough to her that she can tell he's not Barbarossa, but nobody else here knows what Barbarossa looks like because they've only heard stories. He's a guy that rides a horse that looks like this, he has a red beard, and he's a dead shot, and that's what this guy is for them.
Yeah, I guess. So he's passing the torch on, and now he's just going to be Barbarossa.
Yeah, but basically everyone who lives in this ranch thinks that Barbarossa is still around and ready to kill them, except for Josephina, who knows that he's dead and is given some closure with this locket.
And your hope is that Josephina will take the money and her daughter
and leave,
and get out of there.
Yeah,
and I actually wouldn't be surprised if a sequel to this story is...
Are we going to Dread Pirate Roberts this one and Busey passes it on?
A torch passing 20 years later? No, but I would think it would be interesting to come back to his story a generation later. And maybe it is a torch passing movie on top of it, but the story between the films would be that he helped them escape and made a life for himself with Juanita, and that there are other members of this family that they're still trying to figure out where they went. But he wouldn't stick around this region the way that Barbarossa was insisting on doing, because he doesn't have a familial connection to anyone else.
But he is interested in the daughter.
Yes, but the two of them can leave and be alone together, the same way that I guess Barbarossa was planning to do with Josephina. That's the film, Barbarossa. It's pretty good. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was fine. I was like, yeah, and you know what the best part is? It's 90 minutes.
Yeah, a little less than 90 minutes.
Yeah, I was just like, you know what? This is perfect.
Fine.
Yeah, the pacing is really great. And I think Willie Nelson is not the best actor in the world.
Yeah.
But he's fine here.
In Honeysuckle Rose, he could just be himself.
Right.
Like, he's not trying to play anything else. But there were several moments where I felt, especially early in the film, very taken out of the story by his sort of lack of character that he wasn't.
Yeah.
He wasn't being who I thought Barbarosa was supposed to be.
I think the most potent example of that for me was when he says, I think I want to come back and see Juanita. I think that the point of the scene would have been, like in the script, the point of the scene would have been, I don't want you to come and start a relationship with my daughter because that's my daughter.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to be your Don Braulio and be this close-minded asshole about it. But he's not giving us those conflicting emotions. Instead, he's giving us nothing. Like he's exactly between them, where he's just kind of like, okay, yeah, well, that sounds great. It's like what I say to a person when I'm half listening to a phone call. Like it didn't sound like he was really taking it in and processing it.
And I agree. And I think the thing that I'm missing early in the film is like he's saying all the lines like he's a confident man who's been out on the range his whole life and like knows everything, but he doesn't sound like it. He doesn't have the confidence in his tone to dominate over Gary Busey in these early moments.
Yeah, that's true.
And he speaks Spanish lines like he's never heard Spanish spoken ever in his life.
That's true, yeah.
He's just like, manos arribas gordo. Arrivederci.
It's like, wait a minute, that's not Spanish. But yeah, there's weaknesses and there's strengths to the story. I think Gary Busey's doing a great job.
Yeah.
And I like the Braulio story that he's just this obsessive guy. I feel like we could have explained it a little bit better what his problem is, and I feel like the writer specifically leaves so much gray in the actual story that we don't really know what happened on the wedding night. We don't know what happened between Gary Busey and his brother-in-law, and that's just so that we can still like these characters. Because if we knew what actually happened, then we'd probably be like, well, that is shitty, actually, that you killed 2 of his sons on your wedding night because they cut your ears.
Well, and it has to be shitty. Otherwise, I feel like they tell us.
Yeah.
It's fine. Like with all its flaws, like it's still a fine movie, but it could have been better.
Yeah. And I do wish that the Juanita character had a little bit more to her story, like some kind of a moment between them before the end of the film would have been fine.
Yeah, I feel like every moment is like I wish I had a little bit more information.
Yeah.
But again, I was just.
But again, under 90 minutes.
Yeah,
pretty
exactly.
Sweet.
It's like you can't spend all that time because I like the parallel that both Busey and Nelson have a similar kind of backstory.
Yeah.
In that they're both wanted men for some undisclosed amount of murders.
Yeah, and they're both like victim to a father who keeps sending his sons to kill him.
Yeah, yes.
To the point of indoctrinating a future generation.
Right, yeah. He's like literally telling his grandkids now, and it's like, hey, Don Braulio, why don't you fucking do it? Stop being an asshole and sacrificing your children to this.
It also felt like a couple of those kids had never heard Spanish words before.
Yeah,
like,
true,
why did you cast Hispanic kids?
Yeah. But still, I actually really enjoyed this. This is a thumbs up for me. And I think I gave a thumbs up to Honeysuckle Rose because I was surprised that I could tolerate Willie Nelson in a lead role of a movie. And I think that's the case again here, that it's like he's not the best actor in the world, but he's fine. And it feels like a Western character. So that's totally fine with me. I also think that he's not necessarily supposed to be this like blood and guts bravado guy. That's more the Braulio myth about him, that I think a lot of the movie is about mythology and about how people are confused for their story.
Totally, but I wasn't getting even if he didn't do those things, I wasn't getting this sort of suave, legendary dude persona.
Why is Braulio so scared of this man who he knows to be like a gentle character?
Mm-hmm. I mean, and obviously, like this has been going on for like maybe 20 plus years.
Right. And if he'd offered a peace treaty at some point along the way, he could have killed Barbarosa in his sleep at the ranch, like very easily, because he already knows that Barbarosa would gladly accept a truce at any point because he doesn't want to kill these people. But he also is really good at it, and he's been doing it for a long time. So it's weird for him to say to Gary Busey, like, you really think I would kill 2 Zavala boys? And it's like, you killed 6 this morning.
Well, that's only because they came at him.
Yeah, but it's like, that's what he said that those people did.
They probably did that on the wedding night. So yeah, okay,
yeah.
Sure.
Why?
Yeah, he probably did.
I don't understand the
logic.
logic.
You cut his ears off.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he retaliated.
It's like, they didn't tell me to stop. And it's like, they did. They were shouting. It's like, oh, I couldn't hear it.
I couldn't hear it. My ears were
I
full
couldn't
of
hear
blood.
anything.
Though he does say that he shot his leg off as retaliation for the ears.
Yeah.
But like...
And then that makes me wonder, is he Barbarossa because his ears bled into his beard?
Oh, I'm
that
assuming,
it's not
yeah.
from the blood from the
It's
brothers
not the fact
getting their
that
throats slit?
Willie Nelson is a redhead.
Well, that too, yeah. But did they? I guess they didn't call him Barbarossa before the wedding, though. Because he says when he's telling the legend that this man came and he saved me from a gunfight and he took care of our children and he worked in our fields. But he says that he had a beard the color of honey. So he said it was blonde, and then it became red with the blood on the wedding.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
But yeah, that's Barbarossa. It's a thumbs up for me.
Yeah, I'll give it a thumbs up.
Yeah, it's a thumbs up.
What are we thinking letterbox for this one?
I guess for all the complaining, I actually have it pretty high. I have it in number 8 out of 24 for the year. It is below Cannery Row and above The Border.
I have it at number 7, which puts it below Vice Squad, but above The Border.
There you go.
I have it at number 8, which is above The Beast Within and below The Border. So that's fine. We all have it right next to The Border.
That's where it belongs.
Yeah, the movie takes place largely next to the border.
Correct.
They even cross it a few times.
Does Willie Nelson have a song in this movie? I don't remember hearing it.
No.
I don't think I was surprised.
Yeah, that is kind of strange. Because he definitely had songs in Honeysuckle Rose.
For
literally On the Road Again was an original song in that movie.
But we didn't even have to put it originally in here. Like I could see like a Poncho and Lefty kind of thing happening here, and that works.
Our director here was Fred Schepisi. Before this, he had directed Libido, The Devil's Playground, and so far on the show, The Chant of Jimmy Blacksmith. This was his first American production. After this, he directs Iceman, Plenty, Roxanne, A Cry in the Dark, which is the Dingo Ate My Baby movie, Mr. Baseball, 6 Degrees of Separation, IQ, It Runs in the Family, and according to IMDb, he currently has 2 features in pre-production, one called Burnt Piano and one called The Demona Affair. The writer here was William D. Wittliff. Before this, he wrote The Black Stallion, and for the podcast Honeysuckle Rose and Raggedy Man. He later writes Legends of the Fall and The Perfect Storm. The music here was from Bruce Smeaton. The studio made efforts to attach Jerry Goldsmith, but the director was determined to hire his regular composer Smeaton, who had scored Schepisi's previous films Devil's Playground and Jimmy Blacksmith. So far in our regular episodes, he also scored The Earthling, another Australian production, and after this, he follows Schepisi to Iceman, Plenty, Roxanne, A Cry in the Dark. He also scores Eleni for Peter Yates. Previously, he lit Playground and Jimmy Blacksmith. Later, the regulars, Iceman, Plenty, Roxanne, Cry in the Dark. He also did The 89 Punisher, Queen of the Damned, and Evan Almighty. The editor here was David Ramirez. He previously cut New York, New York, and for the show American Pop. After this, he cuts Still Smokin' and big batches of Star Trek TNG and DS9. The other editor was Don Zimmerman. Before this, he cut Heaven Can Wait, Being There, and previously on the show, A Change of Seasons. Later this season, he cuts Rocky 3 and Best Friends. And later, Saturday Night Fever sequel, Staying Alive, Rocky 4, Cobra, Over the Top, Navy SEALs, Diggstown, Ace Ventura Pet Detective, The Nutty Professor, Liar Liar, Half Baked, and Galaxy Quest. He cuts Mike Myers' Cat in the Hat, Flight of the Phoenix remake, Night at the Museum, Rush Hour 3, Men in Black 3, and most recently, Bill and Ted 3. IMDb also lists him as an uncredited director for Rhinestone.
And he's also the father of the editor that I worked with, Dan Zimmerman, on Max Payne. So Dan and Dean are his twin boys who are both also editors.
Right, and they all work on major
They all work on, incredible stuff.
Willie Nelson played Barbarossa. Before this, he appeared in The Electric Horseman, and we've seen him now in Honeysuckle Rose and Thief. Much later, he has credits playing himself on King of the Hill and characters in Gone Fishin', Wag the Dog, Half Baked, and he's Uncle Jesse Duke in the 2005 Dukes of Hazzard movie. Gary Busey played Karl Westover. Before this, he showed up in the 76 Star is Born, and he picked up a Best Actor nomination as Buddy Holly in the Buddy Holly story. He's in John Milius's gold standard surf movie Big Wednesday. We've seen him now in Carney, Foolin' Around, and for a brief cameo in Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. Later, he appeared in Lethal Weapon, Predator 2, Under Siege, Black Sheep, and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. He's kind of famous for his occasionally frightening eccentricities, and his bizarre behavior is often blamed on either a history of substance abuse or a severe late 80s motorcycle accident, which left him with permanent brain damage. My only brush with Busey was during a college internship on Adult Swim's Tom Goes to the Mayor, on which Busey appears as a guest star, and suffice to say, he's an odd duck. He's also, of course, the father of Jake Busey, who appears later in these credits. Isela Vega played Josephina. Before this, she shows up in Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, and much more recently, she's credited as Old Woman in Dora and the Lost City of Gold. That's the Dora the Explorer movie that just came out. Gilbert Roland played Don Braulio. His first credit was as an extra in the 1923 Hunchback of Notre Dame. He's Captain Lopez in The Seahawk, Ahmed Abdullah in Around the World in 80 Days. His daughter Lorinda created the sculptures from last season's Whose Life Is It Anyway, and she passed away in August. This is his final credit. Danny De La Paz played Eduardo. Before this, he was in Boulevard Nights, and later he shows up in 8 Million Ways to Die, Miracle Mile, Free Jack, and American Me. Alma Martinez played Juanita. She was Lupe in Zoot Suit earlier this season. She's Gloria in Born in East L.A. George Voskovec played Herman Pahmeyer. Before this, he's in Butterfield, and so far on the show in Somewhere in Time. This is his final film credit as well. Sharon Compton played Hilda. We saw her last in our minisode review of Dr. Heckle and Mr. Hype. This is her second to last credit before Wizards of the Lost Kingdom 2 in 1989. She also has art department credits on Battle Beyond the Stars and Steel. Howard Chamberlain played Emil. He was Thorpe in The Best Years of Our Lives, Judge Atkins in Kramer vs. Kramer, and this is his second to last credit before Electric Dreams in 1984. After his appearance in 1952's High Noon, he was blacklisted for 25 years by the House Un-American Activities Committee, and this was one of his first major roles back after Kramer vs. Kramer. Harry Caesar played Sims. I don't hear them say his name, but Harry Caesar's in when they're getting food and Pahmeyer's shooting at them.
Okay.
He's the other guy that's leaning against the same cart. Before this, he was in Lady Sings the Blues, Emperor of the North, and so far on the show we've seen him as Granville in The Longest Yard, Jimmy in A Small Circle of Friends, and later he's Byron in Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo. He's Tennyson, the cook from the airport diner in MacGyver episode Last Stand, and he shows up in A Few Good Men and Josh and SAM. Wulff Muser played Floyd. He's back this season for Yes, Giorgio. He appears in MacGyver episode Easy Target, and more recently, he was Adolf Hitler in the Amazon series Man in the High Castle. Kai Wulff played Otto. We've seen him in Heaven's Gate. He's back this season for Firefox. One of his most recognizable roles is that of the German pilot in John Landis's Three Amigos, the one who was obsessed with Ned Niederlander until he learned about movie magic and the fake gunplay, forcing Ned to prove his skills in person. Over the course of the original MacGyver series, Kai Wulff played 4 different villains: Stepan Froloff in Every Time She Smiles, the introductory episode of Terry Hatcher's Penny Parker character, Hans Visser, an evil stock car racer in Collision Course, Rhino Poacher Ladysmith in the controversial Black Rhino episode, and finally Nicholas von Leer, the evil German treasure hunter from the blatant Last Crusade homage episode Eye of Osiris.
I know I said it on the MacGyver podcast, but that scene when that mummy reaches out its arms freaked the hell out of me as a kid.
In Eye of Osiris?
Yeah, and it still freaks the hell out of me.
Yeah, that's pretty great. He voices dozens of German soldiers in what some might call a plethora of video games, i.e. basically every Call of Duty, Medal of Honor, Company of Heroes game, as well as every recent Indiana Jones and James Bond game. Roberto Contreras played Cantina owner. He was a villager in The Magnificent Seven. We saw him last in our minisode review of The Day Time Ended, and next season he's Emilio Rebenga in Scarface. His final credit was as Cruz's grandfather in Blood In, Blood Out. Luis Contreras played Angel. His first credit was in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He was a Zoot Suit in Spielberg's 1941. We've seen him on the show in Last Married Couple in America, Heartbeat, Long Riders, Blues Brothers, and Borderline. He's back this season for 48 Hours, and later in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, the 86 Running Scared, Blood In, Blood Out, and he's El Gato in an episode of Briscoe County Jr. Itasca Wilson played Maddie, back this season as Bo in Parasite. It's a 3D monster movie. Allison Wittliff played Emily. She's the daughter of screenwriter William D. Wittliff. Jake Busey played a cook boy. So when they stop into that party outside the horse auction, the person that's serving them, there's 2 young boys here. One of them is Jake Busey, who is one of the cook boys in the credits, and the other is Reed Wittliff, who is the son of screenwriter Wittliff and the brother of Emily actress Allison Wittliff. But Jake Busey actually has credits beyond this. He shows up in a pair of Dazed and Confused clones, The Stoned Age and PCU, Later, he's in a Tales from the Crypt episode Surprise Party, and then he exploded in the late 90s with major roles in Twister, The Frighteners, Contact, and Starship Troopers. More recently, he's shown up in Justified, Stranger Things, and the beloved but instantly canceled 2019 Swamp Thing series. Paul English played a horse trader. We saw him last as Paul in Honeysuckle Rose. Those are all the credits I have for this one. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share, you can find all our socials at linktree/vintagevideopod. If you enjoy what we're doing, consider giving us a review on iTunes. I don't think it helps visibility, but it's good for morale. And if you really like the show, maybe you should join our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/vintagevideopodcast for access to all our monthly 70s reviews and a hand in choosing next month's film. Patrons are currently choosing between The Apprentice of Duddy Kravitz, Death Wish, The Education of Sonny Carson, Flesh Gordon, Golden Needles, Gone in 60 Seconds, Mr. Majestic, My Name is Nobody, Savage Sisters, The Tamarind Seed, Uptown Saturday Night, and The White Dawn for a 50th anniversary review next month. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join us next time when we'll be discussing Death Wish 2, which IMDb describes like so. Architect Paul Kersey once again becomes a vigilante when he tries to find the 5 street punks who murdered his daughter and housekeeper, this time on the dark streets of Los Angeles. We leave you now with the trailer for Death Wish 2.
It happened once before.
Some muggers followed my wife and daughter home from the market.
It's about to happen again.
The police there got a very good description of the muggers, too. But it didn't do any good.
We do what we can.
And so does he.
Is this your daughter, Mr. Kersey? Mr. Kersey, is that Karl?
When murder and rape are the crimes, Bronson is the only punishment. Charles Bronson, Death Wish 2.
There's something else you should know, sir. Paul Kersey now lives in Los Angeles.
Oh, my God.
Now you tell me there's a vigilante out there. You believe in Jesus, isn't it? Well, you're going to meet him.
He killed 9 people in New York City 4 years ago. The people he killed were muggers. He became a hero.
What did he look like?
He was a very good citizen, that's what he was. That guy saved our lives, damn it. Where the hell were you guys, giving out parking tickets?
When violence rules the city, when the police can't stop it, one man will, his way.
Watch out!
Charles Bronson.
Goodbye.
Death Wish 2. He's doing it for you.